You can support Muslims in the Middle East and support countries who are not barbaric. And that means we have to have the moral fortitude to let the Iranian people know that we see what they're going through. And that's where we can put some passion.
What does this mean for the taxpayers of Colorado? It means that tens of millions of dollars have been overpaid from the Medicaid system. And it's not fraud. It's just incompetence.
55 million Americans watched the Academy Awards. In 2014, it went down to 40 million with 12 Years as a Slave, which is a powerful and very good movie. It is down now to about 18 million people.
So the firefighters, while waiting for the Instacart driver's car to get towed, the driver's saying, I got all these groceries in my car. The fire department in Washington delivered the groceries. Hello, everybody. This is my friend Deb.
And this is my friend Mandy.
And together we are Mandy and Deb. Nailed it.
Nailed it. So
First thing I want to tell you is that it's time for you to subscribe to our channel. And as a matter of fact, you should really subscribe to all the shows on IITV. But if you only subscribe to one, make it this one.
Yeah,
because
that's
truly,
right.
I mean, we are the best.
But all of them right there, subscribe.
All of them, right. Hit that subscribe button so you don't miss anything. And follow us on Facebook, Mandy, Fancy Ampersand, and Deb. Mandy and Deb. And we'll see you over there to chat about what we're talking about today. And oh my goodness, do you see how long we have long sheets? So we're going to jump right in because we have so much news to talk about.
And if I may say,
please,
we've got issues.
Yes, we do. Starting with, I want to talk about this because it is one of those things that I think is getting underplayed in the media here. And it is so critically important to not just what happens in Iran or the Middle East, but what happens in the United States of America. And that is the protests in Iran. Now, they have since been tamped down. And when I say tamped down, I mean the Iranian regime murdered a bunch of people, arrested a bunch of people. Estimates are ranging anywhere from 25 to 36,000 people were killed over a 2-day period as the regime cracked down. But it's not over because the Iranian regime is on the rocks. And why do we care? Why do we care about Iran? Iran is the single biggest funder of terrorism directed at the West in the world. And if the Iranian regime changes and the young people in Iran are tired of living under the mullahs, this is our best chance. This is a chance to do significant things to bring peace to the Middle East. And when we bring peace to the Middle East, we bring peace to the United States of America. Because if there aren't people in the streets chanting death to America, it's a lot easier to have peace from the Middle East.
It sure is. It sure is. And when you look at it, it's interesting because Iran has been here before. Iran has been here before. I'm sorry, it's my middle American accent. Iran has been here before when we were actually enforcing the sanctions because there are international sanctions on their oil production. Under the previous administration, they didn't enforce them, which is why Iran at that time had millions of dollars to give to Hamas and, infiltrate and, have that terrible act of barbarism on October 7th. And by the way, they also supported what happened in Afghanistan with the Taliban, which is why billions of our own military equipment and supplies ended up in the hands of Hamas. They're really behind all of this destabilization. And that's why when we look at the Middle East, one of the important things when we're talking with one another, it's not a monolithic one viewpoint. In fact, most of the peaceful nations in the area do not want Iran to have nuclear weapons. By the way, existential threat to Israel, to the United States, and to the rest of the world. And what's important now is, fortunately, we're at the beginning of an administration that is not going to let up on the sanctions. And that's really where this time around these actual protests began because their economy is falling. And, it doesn't matter where you are in the world. What do people really want? Here in America, the word is affordability. They want to be able to provide for their families and different things like that. But it was just actually a little bit over a year ago that there were also protests going on because of the death of a 22-year-old young woman who was visiting there from a Kurdish area. She was arrested. And by the way, women, let's just remember this. If we get worked up over women's rights, great. How about we look at places like Iran, where she was arrested by the morality police because she was not wearing a hijab. She was beaten to the point that she died 2 days later. it is a chance to stand up, support these sanctions, support the Iranian people who are actually fighting for their own freedom. It's not to them something, America bad or good, although they're crying out for our support. They simply want to live their lives.
Well, the reason that this is not getting a lot of coverage in the American media, and this is my speculation, but I think it makes sense, is that admitting that Iran is a terroristic regime, admitting that the leadership of Iran are horrible people, it forces a kind of cognitive dissonance for the support for the Palestinians, which is actually kind of turned into support for Hamas, which is one of their terror outposts, right? So I think it is really easy for the American news media to just look away because it doesn't force any difficult questions. And I saw a video online on Twitter, and it was college students, female college students, and a woman was asking, do you think women have it harder in the United States of America or Iran? Now, do I even need to tell you what these young skulls full of mush actually said? To Deborah's point, they murdered a young woman for not covering her face. They murdered a young person who was singing in the streets because you're not allowed to sing in Iran. And yet we have college students in the United States of America saying that Trump's America is actually worse for women than Iran. That's why I wanted us to talk about this, because I'm not going to look away. I have a nephew who lives in Israel, and he said the Israeli people are like, where is Trump? When is he going to help these people? Because they're fighting for their very lives. And when you put that in context with watching people cosplay revolutionaries here in the United States, running up to ICE agents and blowing their little whistles and disrupting things and feeling like superheroes, that's not life and death. What's happening in Iran is life and death, and yet people continue to come out, people continue to protest, knowing that there's a chance they may be murdered by the regime.
Yeah, and sometimes when we actually see something, it can bring it home to us. And one of the things I think is the hardest movie I've ever seen and is required watching, I think, for any American woman. A friend of ours, Cyrus Narasta, he is Persian. He says Persian proudly. He's proud of his heritage. He is also a proud American citizen. He made a movie with his wife called The Stoning of Soraya M. You would watch this and you think, oh my gosh, that must have been from the barbaric Middle Ages. No, this was within the last 20 years that a woman was buried up to her neck and stoned in Iran for one reason, because her husband wanted a divorce and she was fighting it. Now, the reason why this is important, because there's so much passion in America. We are compassionate people, but it is weaponized in the wrong direction when we don't see where real injustices are actually happening. And by the way, two things can be true. You can support Israel and support Muslims, because in the Middle East, Israel is one of the only countries where Muslims, Christians, non-believers, secular Jews all live together in peace. I was hearing this interview with a Muslim man who lives in Israel. He says there's more Supreme Court justices, or whatever they're called. There are more professionals that are Muslim in Israel than in almost any other country. More women elevated to Muslim women elevated to professional positions. So you can support Muslims in the Middle East and support countries who are not barbaric. And that means we have to have the moral fortitude to let the Iranian people know that we see what they're going through, and that's where we can put some passion.
Amen to that. Okay, we got to move on. Our list is too long. Chop, chop. Let's go.
We're snapping along. Okay.
Next thing, this story, if you live in Colorado, this story should make your blood boil.
Yes.
It really, really should.
It does.
Announced last week, there was just this little news story. Hey, by the way, the department that oversees Medicaid in the state of Colorado, the name of which just completely zapped out of my head, but that's okay. They provided a billing code to people who provide rides to people on Medicaid. Now, there are varying stages of what kind of ride you're getting. There's emergency services. That wasn't this. It was a non-emergency transport situation. And what they did was they gave them the wrong billing code. So people would give people who needed assistance, Medicaid patients, to appointments and whatnot, and they would use the billing code provided by the state, but it was the wrong one. The billing code that they were provided reimbursed about $658 roughly. The billing code they were supposed to use would have reimbursed $65. So you can see the discrepancy. Now, what does this mean for the taxpayers of Colorado? It means that tens of millions of dollars have been overpaid from the Medicaid system, and it's not fraud. It's just incompetence. What's super frustrating about this is, I know that mistakes happen. But where was the backstop? Where was the auditing? Where was the, hey, why are we suddenly paying so much money in non-emergency transport? Why didn't somebody look at this number? And the simple answer is, there's no one who really cares that much because it's not their money, right? This is the problem with government money. When I spend my money or Deborah spends her money, we spend it like it is our last dollar. We pay attention to where it goes. We pay attention to how it's spent. But when you're talking about government, it isn't. As far as I know, no one's been fired. As far as I know, no one's been disciplined. As far as I know, no one has figured out a way to make sure this has happened again. But with what we're seeing around the country right now, this was not fraud. To be clear, not fraud. But when we see in Minnesota that billions of dollars was defrauded from the taxpayers of Minnesota and the leadership there knew about it, isn't it time that we started holding leadership in these departments to account? Isn't it time that we said, you know what? You're not that good at this job. If you missed all of this overbilling, you just aren't good at this job. It's time to make changes to ensure two things. Number one, I'm a taxpayer.
Yeah.
You take a tremendous amount of my money every single year. I want to make sure it's spent wisely. Right? I'm not an anarchist. I believe we need government. I'm not demanding that we get rid of all government, but can you just make sure that you take care of the money that you take out of my pocket? And secondarily, Medicaid serves, it was designed to serve the poorest of the poor, the elderly, pregnant women, and those people may not be able to get the care they need because of this kind of fraud. We have to do something, and we have to do it now.
Well, and this is the whole thing. Meritocracy, for some reason, has gotten a bad name. All that means is you deserve to be where you are. You are good at your job. And the fact is, this isn't brand new. It's been going on since 2023. We're talking 3 years of this kind of waste, nobody being held responsible. And to your point, Mandy, I do believe in a civil society, there is a safety net for those who really need it. But when you're looking at that kind of incompetence, I certainly hope someone's held responsible because, by the way, you made a great point. Government doesn't have any money. Government, the only jobs government creates, by the way, are government jobs. You know, it's really small business owners. And the only money they have are the taxes we pay for the things we agree to. And there is, by the way, some fraud as well. And the reason why this is important is because here in Colorado, they're talking right now about a $1 billion shortfall. So before they start talking about raising everyone's taxes or cutting programs where they really should be, let's look at where the money shouldn't be going. Number one, the tens of millions of dollars that we're talking about in this mismanagement. Another one is there's an article, it's in CPR, Colorado Public Radio. Nearly 12,000 illegal immigrants are receiving free health care right now. What does that mean? 150 million of your and my dollars. Now listen, I'm all for compassion. But the reality is taxpayers are paying this money. And with that kind of mismanagement of funds, that kind of fraud that's not supposed to be going to people who are not here, citizens, taxpayers, et cetera, you know where they're cutting programs? They're cutting, or basically talking about it, cutting them to severely autistic children, children with learning disabilities. We personally have a family member who fosters and has now adopted what they call a medically fragile child. Someone that requires 24-hour care, and when they're taken care of in homes and they're nurses, it cuts the cost and it raises the humanity for these children, but they want to cut those programs. I'm sorry, we actually, this is our money. We have a right to have some accountability. And I think it's time for us to say, fraud needs to be investigated. Mismanagement needs to be investigated. And yes, people can make mistakes, but we're talking about 3 years.
Yes. It's beyond that, though. And the real issue with Medicaid all started with the Affordable Care Act, which is the most misnamed act in the history of the world. Obamacare was never designed to lower the cost of health care. I read the bill. At the time, I had an insurance license, so I know what I'm doing. But when Obamacare was passed, I said on my radio show at the time, this won't do anything. But the reality is that it was just a middle step for Democrats who want to move us to single payer. The easiest way to get people to agree to single payer is to put more people on the government dole when it comes to their health care. Let me give you these numbers. In 2007, and I got these from a recent column on CompleteColorado.com, an arm of the Independence Institute. Yeah. But in this column, in 2007, 5.7% of Coloradans were on Medicaid. That was a total of 386,000 people, roughly. In 2025, 20% of the population is on Medicaid. 1.22 million people. The reality is that we need to contract the Medicaid expansion once again, and some of those people are going to have to go into the exchange where they will be subsidized, where they can buy their own health insurance. We have to protect this system for the most vulnerable, the people Deborah was just talking about, for elderly people, for pregnant women who need this. We have to do a better job with streamlining who's on it without kicking off the people who need it most.
100%. I mean, really, it is our taxpayer dollars. We need to look at that because it isn't being uncaring to say the money needs to go where it needs to go. So we want to see transparency. We want to make sure that we're not another huge headline like Minnesota or California, but we have some things we got to clean up here. Now, moving along, though, did you want to make one more point about this?
I think, can we we'll skip to this one?
Yeah, let's just skip to that one. Perfect.
We've got like 15 topics. We're not going to have time to get all of them. But speaking of like the comparisons to Minnesota and Colorado.
Yes.
So Minnesota obviously is in a terrible state of unrest right now because of the ICE arrests and deportations. Here's some fun facts for you. The fun facts are this. 25% of the deportations happening right now today are happening in Texas. There hasn't been a single protest. There hasn't been a single altercation with ICE agents in any way, shape, or form. The number in Minnesota is 1% of all deportations. And yet you would think that they were in there just taking everybody out. Now, I have issues with some of the stuff that we've seen out of some of the behavior of some of the ICE agents. I'm going to be honest. But that being said, the reason that this kind of chaos is happening is because people are interrupting and interfering with law enforcement operations. At the same time, Minnesota law enforcement has been told to stand down. Why do we care about this in Colorado? Because right now in the Colorado legislature, they are trying to pass more laws that would make us an even bigger sanctuary state that would bring that chaos to Colorado. And everybody thinks, well, nobody can agree with this. Everybody wants all these people to stay, but the most recent polling data says something very, very different. A recent Signal poll said 61% of Americans support the deportation of criminal illegal aliens. A Harvard-Harris poll said 54% of Americans still support ICE, 58% reject defunding ICE, 67% say we'd love for law enforcement to cooperate so we can get the criminal aliens out.
Yeah, and that's what is so key because we see something on TV all the time. We know that it always used to be if it doesn't bleed, it doesn't read. You know, it's like the most outrageous headlines, the most violent things. And I agree with you. I think that there are some things that need to be tightened up, and I think they're working on that with what we've seen. But when you see one of those incidents that has been heightened by all of these people pushing back and interfering with law enforcement, you can put yourself in the position, by the way, of the law enforcement themselves. Not forgetting, by the way, that we've had National Guardsmen that have been shot. We've had attacks on ICE agents. The violence has gone up incredibly. But the key is this. When you talk about Colorado being a sanctuary state, that sounds so nice. Sanctuary, warm, safe. What that means is we have laws in Colorado that prohibit local and state law enforcement from coordinating and cooperating with federal law enforcement. And when we look at ICE, what is ICE? ICE are the people that we have hired to enforce the immigration laws that are on our books. And when you break it down that way, so many people, the vast majority, as Mandy was just saying, support that. There's going to be some messiness in it. But when we look at what started everything in Minnesota, by the way, and it's a tiny percentage of what's happening, it's the only place we're really hearing these headlines, you know, it came after Somali gangs are getting, millions and millions of dollars. They have rings that are going on.
With billions.
A B. I know. I feel like I should be billions of dollars. So when we look at that way, we have to understand what's really happening. And I do think it's interesting to note that in this poll, particularly a new one by Signal, the vast majority of independents and Republicans and swing voters widely support ICE, support the agents, support having borders, which makes us a country. And this is not being partisan here because we are at the Independence Institute, but it's interesting to note that Democrats are the only group, self-identified Democrats, that are exactly the opposite, which brings back to a topic that you and I talked about last show. Where do you get your media from? Are you hearing the full story on these things? And we need to also be equipped so we can have conversations with people who maybe are on the other side of the aisle.
What, to your point on where do you get your news? I think it was the Daily Wire. There was a study of if people supported ICE, They generally got their news from the internet, from X, from social media. But if they watched the networks and read the newspapers, they were anti-ICE. So that schism is very clear in where you get your news. So pay attention to where you get your news.
And that's one of the things that we're going to talk about as we move even into the next section is our media, and then we're going to talk about entertainment, out of step with the American people? And here's something that, just to conclude this segment, that I think is troubling, actually. The media, while it's getting a lot of hits, was intended to be an incredibly important part of our civil society. It's supposed to be the watchdog, the fourth rail to hold everybody in power to accountability with just facts, not opinion, not whatever will get you clickbait or rage bait. And in 1972, by the way, when all the president's men did their job and exposed Watergate, the trust in media vastly across all Americans was 72%. Today is exactly the opposite. Today, 70% of Americans don't trust the media. And I would just say, look for alternative sources.
Well, and a great way to sort of, a nice encapsulation of why people don't trust the media is the story of Alex Preddy, the man who was killed in a confrontation with ICE. Initially, he was held up as this angelic creature, practically the Florence Nightingale of the VA system.
That was my first version I heard.
When ugly video came out of him spitting at ICE agents and kicking a car, MSNBC, MS Now, whatever they're called now, they actually they photoshopped a photo of him to make him more attractive. Now, how are you supposed to have trust in the media? Oh, did you not know this?
Oh my gosh.
Oh yeah. They've admitted it. They photoshopped him to make him more attractive, because if you're going to have a martyr for your cause, he has to be good looking.
He has to be perfect.
It was crazy.
And even to the point, one last funny story, it's not funny, it's sad, but we actually have a U.S. senator that held up an image of that altercation with ICE, and it was so clear that it was AI that one of the ICE agents was missing his head. So let's be discerning, folks. I mean, it may be really good AI or really bad AI.
He was just wearing a really good camouflage mask, Deborah.
Oh, they hadn't doctored him yet to make him look better.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, well, we're moving on that theme, but we've got stuff. And I think I'll kick this one off because we're going to...
Well, this is your world. As a recovering actress, this is Deborah's sport.
I escaped this world.
Yeah.
As I say, I'm a recovered actress in my left brain and my right mind. But yes, I was in there for a little while. If you don't know, my husband was a producer with Walt Disney Studios. We have our own company. We lived in this world for a little while. And I think it's interesting because we just talked about, is the media out of touch with the American people? And most people don't trust them anymore, understandably so. Well, the media, the entertainment world is following the same trajectory. We want to share a couple of things because obviously this is awards season, yay! It's an opportunity for people in the industry to self-congratulate one another and push their pet projects, basically. But what's sad to me is I used to be one of those people that used to love to watch the Academy Awards. Well, I just want to give you a couple of statistics because we're going to talk a little bit about the Grammys, we're going to talk about the Academy Awards. But just so you know, you're probably one of those people that doesn't watch it anymore, number one, because you're tired of being lectured to about how you're just not aware enough and you don't care enough about the right things. And also because they keep propping up movies that nobody watches. And I want to share a couple statistics of how far these have gone. In 1998, when Titanic won, and it was a good movie, it was a popular movie.
Sweeping epic.
It was sweeping epic. 55 million Americans watched the Academy Awards. In 2014, it went down to 40 million with 12 Years as a Slave, which is a powerful and a very good movie. It is down now to about 18 million people. It's gone from 55 million, even higher in its heyday, down to 18 million because Americans are saying, you know what? I don't want to be lectured to. You're supposed to be entertaining me. And now when the Academy Awards only have criteria that you have to have a certain number of diversity people in your cast or in your hiring, it is no longer something that's celebrating necessarily the best of art. I may not agree, by the way, with the message of a movie, but if it's artistically done, great, good on you. So that's one of the places, and then we'll go on to another one here.
Well, I want to give a little shout out to our mutual friend, Christian Toto. He writes great at Hollywood and Toto. He's got a great book called Virtue Bombs, How Hollywood Got Woke and Lost Its Soul.
Yes.
But it's more than that. It is the never-ending belief by those in Hollywood that they don't just have to make movies. They have to prove to the rest of the world that they're on the right side of all these moral issues.
Yes.
And hats off to Bill Maher. Bill Maher he just doesn't care anymore about making people angry. He went on a tear on his show, Real Time with Bill Maher. It might have been in the after part, but he essentially created a huge kerfuffle when asked at the Golden Globes where his pen was. Where's his pen? And he went on a huge tear and he said, those political pens are like crucifixes for liberals. Because every time I see them, I think to myself, Jesus Christ. Which
that's Bill Maher
that's
for
Bill
you.
Maher, but he's right. And Billie Eilish showed up at the Grammys on Sunday. Billie Eilish is worth $53 million, according to People magazine. Billie Eilish lives in a beautiful home on 2.5 acres. And she decided to walk onto the stage to accept her award by saying, you can't be illegal on stolen land, which is great. Except her house is on stolen land. And now the Native American tribe whose land that was, they are the Tongva tribe of the Los Angeles area. They have said, she has not reached out to us. Now, they were very grateful that they got a random mention, but they were like, could she have said our name? That would have been nice. So it's all about the virtue signaling. And one of the points that Bill Maher made absolutely beautifully was, how many causes have been stopped by those political pens? The answer is none of them. We still have AIDS. Ukraine is still at war. We're still Me Tooing, whatever. I mean, It's all so performative that it's almost comical. And I think average, everyday, middle Americans have just checked out. Yeah. They don't want to see a bunch of Hollywood celebrities who have more money than they're ever going to have stand around and pat each other on the back for all of their virtue signaling. It's like America is just like, I'm out.
Yeah, 100%. Having been there, we were talking about acting. I've been in those studios. We've been to one of the Academy Awards party. I won't even tell you who we had to avoid. It was just very creepy. But anyway, the point of it is this. Hollywood is really like a small high school. Everybody knows one another. Everybody knows they're trying to hire one another. It's one of the most desperate places around, that in Washington, D.C., where everybody's looking for their next job. And it is both the pressure and the desire to virtue signal to be in. And when people sometimes just don't go along with it, it's amazing the responses. At the Grammys, one of the most refreshing moments was Jelly Roll, who, by the way, tatted up. He talked actually very movingly about getting this Grammy, and he did not have the required pin on. Instead, he talked about his faith, redemption, how that doesn't that Jesus doesn't have a political party, does not have a label. Jesus is for everybody. And he talked about God's love and how it changed him. And one of the only questions he got afterwards was, where's your pin? And he was like, I don't think Jesus is all about the pins either. But I think the bigger thing is this. I think we are so out of balance in our culture. Entertainment is wonderful. There are people whose acting I admire so much. They're directing I admire. They're truly artists. But it's time we acknowledge, because you are good in this area does not mean you have a master's degree in constitutional theory and how to better someone's life in this way. I also think if you want a platform, what a wasted opportunity. I mean, Jennifer Lawrence, we talked about, has had a turnaround. She's not talking about it. But I do remember when she used her opportunity in the Academy Awards to talk about the terrible discrimination against women in Hollywood as she was making tens of millions of dollars. What an opportunity instead to say, I'm standing up for, let's say the Nigerian Christians, which Nicki Minaj did, and now she's out in Hollywood and in the music scene. It's time that we get back to what entertainment was supposed to be. Telling stories of the human spirit that unite us, that inspire us, that challenge us, whether it's a morality tale or an inspirational story. That is what it's supposed to be, and that's why the ratings are dropping.
I just want to know who you had to avoid at the parties. That's all I want to know. That's all. I didn't hear anything. I did not hear anything from the rest of what you said. I was just like,
But I'll tell you who, Harvey Weinstein, who tried to hire my husband away from Disney. And this was before everything came out, but everybody knew. And there were others who will go unnamed. But the reality is, if you don't know that that's going on, and by the way, it's really hard to be successful in a industry that is a closed silo. And that's why I'm excited about what's happening in the entertainment world, with things breaking wide open, with really what we're seeing is the demise of the studio system and amazing things happening. Amazon, by the way, if you haven't seen it, King David or House of David is this series that's made excellently. They have a new Wonder label, and it's faith-based, but it's just great. Money is starting to go where people want to actually see things.
Well, I mean, I think The Chosen. If you haven't seen The Chosen, if you're not familiar, The Chosen has sort of opened up Hollywood financiers' eyes about the need, the desire, the practicality of making these kind of family-friendly movies. You know, we were talking about this. I was talking with a friend of mine. when I was a kid, back in the 1900s, but when I was a kid, we all watched,
millennium.
we all watched television together, right? Like you sat down and at 8 o'clock, like the family shows came on and we all watched those shows together. Well, now we have a million different channels. We have all these different silos and there's still this thirst, but it's just not getting, enough of it is not getting made, which is unfortunate. But let's talk about a movie that did get made.
Yes.
It got made for $40 million. And this movie has shown how disconnected the critic class is from the American people. Melania. First of all, I'm not going to lie, I totally want to see this movie, but I don't really go to the movie theater, so I'm going to wait till it hits streaming.
There you go.
I find Melania Trump fascinating. I really, truly do. I think she's probably one of the most unknown parts of the Trump administration. You really don't know exactly how that partnership works. So I'm going to see the movie, but boy, the critics could not wait. They could not wait to see the preview so they could just say, this is trash. And you know what? It might be. I'm going to be honest. But then you have all the Trump supporters who went and saw the movie and loved it. So you have this just a perfect example of what we're talking about. It's like, if you love Trump, you're going to love the Melania movie. If you're a current critic, other than probably Christian Toto, you're going to hate this movie. And it's sad because, again, back in the 1900s, we could watch Siskel and Ebert and get a really good review of whether a movie was well done, if the pacing was good, if the acting was good, if the directing was good. And then you could decide on whether you want to see it. Well, now, who do you listen to? Especially if you're a right or center-right person, who can you rely on to say, this is a really good movie you should see?
Yeah, and by the way, if you're a mom, if you've got young kids or grandkids, one really great resource is Movie Guide, because Movie Guide actually talks about the quality, but also talks about the content. Like, oh, this animated movie is awesome, but by the way, they talk a lot about sexual activity for elementary school kids, or whatever it is. They actually give you a bit of the content as well, because there's great craft. And then there's the message that is wrapped within it. But one of the things I find interesting about the Melania documentary, first of all, it's the highest earning documentary in opening weekend, $7 million in opening weekend in 10 years, the highest non-music documentary. But here's the actual score. So on Rotten Tomato, critics gave it 11%.
I mean,
the popcorn meter of the audience was 99%. So there's a bit of a disparity there. Now, granted, there's a particular audience that probably went to it, but for heaven's sake, couldn't we just all find it interesting that this woman who is stunning physically, but she's elegant and she's kept herself out of the limelight and raised her son and is from Yugoslavia. She's the first lady that is a naturalized citizen. There's just some interesting things there. And usually an entertainment world that loves fashion just can't give it above 11% because of the topic itself.
I mean, it's Melania.
It's Melania. So one last thing, by the way, we're going to mix all this together because coming up this weekend is the Super Bowl. And we're going to see what happens because talk about being out of touch with most of America.
Okay.
The halftime show.
I may have an unpopular opinion here. First of all, I don't care about this game. Okay, the Denver Broncos lost, and now it's the Seahawks and the Patriots, and I'm like, bleh. So I'm watching the game for the snacks. Okay, fully, I'm just doing this for the snacks. But when they announced Bad Bunny as the Super Bowl halftime show, I felt the exact same way as I did when they announced Kendrick Lamar as the halftime show. Well, it's not my demographic, right? I'm not the demographic they're going for. They've got to broaden the base of the NFL, and bringing in a Latin artist who's one of the most popular artists in the world, and he is a great way to do that. But at the same time, I'm like, eh. So then I heard about the Turning Point USA halftime show, just saw the lineup. Eh. I mean, like, am I going to turn it off to go watch Kid Rock and like two other people that I'm not familiar with? It seems unnecessary.
I don't totally disagree with you. I mean, Bad Bunny did say at the Grammys, he did say, and he's from Puerto Rico, so he's, it's part of an American, part of our larger part of America. He said, we are not savages, we are not animals, we are not aliens, we are Americans. He was talking against ICE. I'm like, that's a point, though. Are you? Are you an American? Do you want to be an American? I just think for me, and granted, I don't know. We might actually be the demographic because a lot of people who love football are just middle America. And when Mandy and I went to the game with the Broncos, one of the best things was people were walking out and they weren't thinking about politics. I think it lost its way, however, when some of the halftime shows, and I can't even remember the artists because I'm not that hip, we're so overly sexualized, or we're so, out of
You're
touch.
talking
And
about J-Lo's boobie.
No,
I'm sorry, Janet Jackson.
Janet Jackson.
Yeah.
But even after that, some of them I'm like, okay, we're turning this off. We're going to go play football in the backyard until we come back on again. It will just be interesting to see. And I'm for free market competition. So let's see what happens with the halftime show.
Well, ultimately, though, this kind of brings it back to our conversation about Hollywood being out of touch. Because when you're watching a football game with your kids, like what person? Because if you think that Hollywood, these halftime shows are put together in 5 minutes, that's crazy. Months and months and months of rehearsal. At some point, someone thought it was a good idea for Justin Timberlake to rip off Janet Jackson's outfit. Now, if you are at a PTA meeting and you are sitting with your friends and you're like, you know what will really make this fundraiser kill? If a boy rips off a piece of clothing from a woman. Like, no one does that in reality, but the reality is that Hollywood, and can I have like a academic moment for a second?
Yes, you may. I grant you that right.
I love art. I love fine art. I don't love modern art. And I really hate postmodern art. And if you don't know what postmodern art is, postmodernism, the school of thought of postmodernism in the art world, which is where it all started, rejects the notion of beauty. It rejects the notion of truth. It rejects the notion of everything that is good and holy. It really does. And postmodernism as a part of our society, to me, is so clearly exemplified by Hollywood.
Yeah.
Chappell Roan showed up to the Grammys with a dress that at first blush appeared to be attached to her body by her nipples. Now, thankfully, we found out.
I'm sorry, that just sounds painful.
I know. Wait. I hope nobody steps on her dress, right? But no, we found out they were prosthetic. So they were just stuck on. But why? Why would you do that? Why would Lady Gaga wear a birdcage on her head to perform?
Yeah.
It's a rejection of the notion that there are things that are truly beautiful and truly good. And I think it is the most destructive thing that we can possibly go. I mean, we need universal truths.
Yeah.
We need to be able to say that is universally beautiful and there's nothing wrong with it. And it could be black or white or brown. This isn't about race or gender or any of that stuff. It's about someone doing something beautiful, and we should be able to say that is a beautiful thing. And you know what? That's not beautiful, Gaga. I'm sorry, it wasn't.
Yeah, a meat dress.
Yeah, well,
I'm worried
the
about
meat dress
it.
was attention-getting,
Yeah,
and
it was.
worked,
It was.
You know?
Well, here's two things I want to say before we leave this. One, you make a great point that when people are making these decisions in Hollywood, it's not the rest of us. One of the things I can say is it is one of the most insular communities. I would sit often like on a set and people would talk over me as though I 100% agree with them. And what they would be saying is things like, I just don't understand the rest of the people in the country, that they don't get this. Who are they? I'm like, that's me, let me interject my opinion. And my husband in the halls of Disney, I'm not kidding, and this is going to come across as totally un-PC, but we had young kids at the time. They would come up to him. This is Disney Channel. Their primary audience are families and kids. And suddenly he gets stopped in the middle of the hallway. They go, oh, that's right. You're a straight white guy who's married with kids. What do you think about this? Because almost everybody working there were either, I'll be frank, they were either women that were single and had just given themselves to their careers. That's fine. But they may not know what moms want for their kids. Or there's a lot of people in the LGBTQ community. That's fine also to be represented. But they don't understand what the brand of Disney is. So the people who they're trying to serve, they're not even listening to their voices. And I think that is a huge issue. I had another point, but I don't know what it is.
Well, we'll just move on. Well, no, I mean, I think let's put a punctuation mark on it, just like this. I do think that Americans are speaking with their wallets.
Yes,
They're not going to see these movies. They're not paying money. More and more families are turning off the Disney network because it has just become propaganda.
Yeah.
And I think that Hollywood is going to be forced, and by Hollywood, I mean the movie industry overall, they're going to be forced to have to pay attention or they will perish.
Yeah, they will. And it's already happening, by the way. And that's a good thing, honestly. It used to be only the studios could make the movies and they would buy out the box office weekends. The reality is, with the onset of everything we have at home and the massive amounts of streaming now, you get to choose what you want to watch. You can watch it in the comfort of your home. And I would just say this, there is an adage within Hollywood, even though it's not so much a show business anymore because they make really bad business decisions, but you can vote with your dollars. If you know ahead of time something is absolutely counter to what you hold dear, don't spend the money at the box office. Wait until it's $2.99 streaming if you really have to. But they will say, oh, they want more of this. And that is where we can make a difference. It's already making a huge difference.
All right, phew.
All right. Woo. Okay. We have good news.
We love good news.
Would you like to start?
I would, because
Okay,
my
good.
good news is one of those simple good news stories, and I'm just glad it's a news story.
Yes.
Because I think stuff like this happens all the time. It just flies under the radar. But when I hear this, I'm always excited. So there was a car accident, which is terrible, right?
That's not good news.
And the car of one of the drivers was severely damaged. The driver was okay, but the car was severely damaged. And it happened to be a driver for Instacart.
Oh.
So the firefighters, while waiting for the Instacart driver's car to get towed, the driver's saying, I got all these groceries in my car. The fire department in Washington delivered the groceries for this
You go,
Instacart.
fire
But think about this.
department.
Can you imagine being the homeowner who ordered their groceries and all of a sudden a fire truck pulls up and here come the little firemen delivering your groceries, and they were like, hey, your Instacart driver got in an accident. We just wanted to make sure you got your groceries. But I was like, that's kind of awesome. And I do think stuff like that happens all the
think it
time, where
does.
people are picking up and taking care of things. And so much of it flies under the radar. I just want to, wait, let me get the department. I want to make sure
They can
the
just shout out,
Central
"Take
Pierce
them
Fire
cookies."
and Rescue. Central Pierce Fire and Rescue. They serve the communities of pull y'all up. What? Orting, Parkland, Spanaway, South Hill, and Frederickson in Washington State. So congratulations. Great job, guys, for making sure those groceries got to where they were going.
This was not my good news story, but I just have to give a shout out. There were two police officers in New Jersey. I don't remember where because I didn't make that my good news story. And they said this guy pulled up. He wasn't speaking English. He dragged them out. They realized that his wife is having a baby at that moment in the back seat. Didn't have time. The guy didn't speak English. So one of the two police officers is looking up on his phone, how do you deliver a baby? The other guy was looking, how do you communicate in Portuguese? Push. That was... And the baby's healthy.
There you go.
But here's the good news story. I'm always amazed at particularly women who do something unique, who are like, oh my gosh, you know what? I could be told a million times or tell myself a million times, I can't do that, but they do it anyway. This story is of Taryn Smith. She's a 25-year-old from Nebraska. Okay, if you haven't been through Nebraska lately, not a lot of oceans around. They're very landlocked. Even their lakes are kind of small. Well, she suddenly got fascinated with rowing. And she read a story about a group of women who rowed all the way from California to Hawaii and set a world record in 34 days. I would have just thought, how exhausting, but not Taryn. Taryn instead said, I want to do that. She spent 2 years learning how to row, even in Nebraska. I'm not quite sure where she did it. I think she went to different locations. And she discovered something called the world's toughest row. Now, it is the toughest. It is actually 3,000 miles from the Canary Islands, which is on the western side of Africa, all the way to Antigua. And she decided she was going to do it. So after 46 days rowing by herself, she didn't even do it with a team, 10 to 12 hours a day. She almost gave up on day 27 because there were huge waves. I can't even imagine this, by the way. I'm imagining sharks, so I'm already out of it. But she became the first woman to complete this race, and she did it faster than the time that she set for herself. I just have to say, that's the triumph of the human spirit. I think it's a little crazy, but I'm like, go, Taryn.
That's a little touch of the nuts right there. That is like a little cuckoo for Cocoa, but I just could not. Yeah. That doesn't appeal to me at all. You know, you meet someone and they're like, I really want to climb Mount Everest. And you're like, why? I mean, bleh, I don't want to do that at all.
Here's the one other thing that was really cool, though. She did it, and she raised a lot of money because somebody obviously was alongside of her. They were not in the rowboat with her, but she did Instagram postings, and she raised money for a nonprofit. I think it says Let Girls Run or Run Girls Run or something like that encourages girls to get involved in sports. And I think in this day where we're having this debate, that is super important because it's something Taryn said she wanted to know as she moved into her 30s. She's an overachiever, that she'd done something that she felt truly courageous about.
There you go. Go, Taryn.
Okay, what's your random act of kindness?
This one is a big one. It's not really random because it would have to be directed to a certain person. I want you to think about if there's anyone you owe an apology. Because I recently got an apology from someone from 30 years ago.
Wow.
Okay, and it was a big deal. What was apologized for? It was a very big deal. But I cannot tell you, I cannot get over how much that apology has meant to me. And it was something I'd moved on from years ago, and it's not something I thought about at all, but it has really had a huge impact on me. And I've realized that I probably have people that I need to apologize for. And so now I'm thinking like my wheels are turning. And I thought, if that apology can mean that much to me 30 years later, what would an apology for someone that I maybe have run up against recently? And it's hard to apologize and mean it. It really is. It's a challenging thing to just say, hey, I did this thing and I'm really sorry about it and I just wanted you to know. But you have to do it with no expectations, right?
Yes.
You can't go in expecting them to say, oh my gosh, I forgive you. I mean, that's not it. That's not why you're doing it. You're doing it because that person probably deserves it and you're giving it to them freely, openly, and with no expectation back. So that is my random act of kindness.
It's funny, you and I have had interesting experiences, and I'll just say one more thing about that. That's the other side. We talk about the supernatural element of forgiveness and how you release somebody. That's the other side of it. If you feel like someone needs to forgive you, on both sides of the equation, you don't do it knowing what the result's going to be. You do it because it's the right thing and it frees you up. But I had someone reach out to me who I have not spoken to since I was 16 years old. I'm not going to tell you how many years that is. Google it.
5.
You'll figure it out quickly.
It's 5 years.
Oh, you're so kind. Stop. Really,
5 years.
Really,
5.
stop. Stop.
Just 5 years.
We were best friends from the time we were 12 until we were 16. She suddenly disappeared. I didn't know why. She had spent 10 years trying to find me. We had lunch this week. We spent like 2 hours laughing and crying, and this was a good situation. It might not always be that way if you reconnect with somebody, but it was one of the biggest gifts. And I am so grateful that she did that. And I was able to say, I remember this when I was 14. Did that really happen? And she's like, it did happen. But it was a beautiful thing, and I'm excited to see where it goes. But so here's my challenge to you. Is there someone you've lost touch with? Maybe there's something there, maybe there's not. Maybe it's just someone who meant something to you at that time. And she gave me the greatest, I'm going to get choked up. She gave me the greatest gift and told me about something I said when I was 13 that helped her through a tough time. And I thought, did I say
you know
that?
What? You never know the impact you have. Like I offhand comments, moments of support, a hug, a hey, how you doing?
Yes.
You do not understand that if you say the right thing at the right time to the person who needs it, you can have a huge impact on someone's life.
I agree 100%. And you just never know. If there's someone that you want to reconnect with that's on your heart, sometimes I believe that's God putting them on your heart because maybe they need something in that moment. And maybe instead of an apology, maybe it's something that they did and you want to reach out to them and say, I got to tell you, when you said this, it just was wonderful. That you may hear from them, you may not hear from them, but you will have let them know and you will know that you reached out to them. Or is there someone you lost touch with? Chances are, and I found out from my friend from middle school and high school, she went through a really rough period after we parted ways. And I didn't even know that. I mean, she wasn't easily found, but we got to talk now. So reach out with an apology or reach out with a thank you.
Either way, reach out to the subscribe button right down here.
That's what it comes down to.
Go ahead and subscribe and also check out all the amazing shows. Power Gab, The Twisted View, and of course, Devil's Advocate with our fearless leader, John Calderon.
They're all great. And then follow us on Facebook at Mandy_Deb, Mandy and Deb. And we look forward to you joining you next time.
Bye.